to Breaking the Grade. Hello, educators. Breaking the Grade here with education business founder and education breaker and friend, Nicole Lipkin. Nicole is the owner and founder of HeyKiddo, a unique, no-prep curriculum for parents and teachers alike that shares social, emotional, and leadership skills in a difference-making fashion. So, how has Nicole broken education norms? What concrete problems exist in our school's current way of teaching social emotional learning? And we will dive into work-life balance, something we know is important to Nicole and tough for us all. So sit back and relax, but don't forget to take notes. You're going to want to keep this content very close, especially when you set off on a grade-breaking entrepreneurial journey of your own. Nicole and my co-host John Gamba, both in Philadelphia. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Josh. Woo, Philly.
Yeah, how is everybody today?
Doing good.
Beautiful here in Philly. How's it there in Mexico?
It's beautiful. You know, we've broken a few things today, as you guys know, but it's all good. We're here, and that's the way we do it as entrepreneurs. Speaking of being entrepreneurs and working together, you guys do that quite often. And Nicole, your journey, I know because we talk about mentors a lot, has had others woven in, John currently, which is great. But let's talk about your journey, and then we can, of course, talk about John and his influence on you as well. But take us back. Let's start the journey.
Yeah. So, I started HeyKiddo for a really big personal reason and then professional reason. So the professional reason is I'm a clinical and organizational psychologist. So I do leadership development, executive coaching, big culture change across the globe, across industry, and for 20 years. And working across the globe, I kept on hearing the same complaints about young professionals entering the workforce. And it didn't matter where I was. I just kept on hearing the same thing. And when you boil it down, it came down to coping skills and really foundational social, emotional, and basic leadership skills. And this was coupled with my clinical psychology hat. I recently exited one of the largest psychology practices in Philly. And we had a very large child therapy unit. And over the years of owning that and working in it too, the issues were evolving. Let's just say that what was being talked about on the couch was evolving. And childhood mental health problems, just even from the small point of view, let alone the big global point of view, were escalating. And, as I was, and again, boiling down to a crisis of coping. So professionally, it made a lot of sense. I was like, I got to do this. I got to get in early, right when kids are cognitively ready. We've got to start getting in there and building that foundation of social emotional leadership skills, all coupled with strong mind skills. So professionally, it made a lot of sense, but personally is what pushed me over the edge. My parents were school teachers in the South Bronx when the South Bronx was the South Bronx. And, they were the kind of teachers that went in early to eat breakfast with the kiddos and to be with them and to open up communication and talk and help them. And obviously, they just were very much about building these strong skills. And they obviously built those at home, and my brother and I. And, to be honest with you, they passed away when I was young. And my life could have gone in a very different direction. I'm hyper aware of the very different direction it could have gone. And it didn't. My life turned out great. And it is 1000% because of the foundation they built in me. They really were about building resilience. They were about building strong communication skills. They were about building my strong empathy muscle and compassion muscle and just really a deep self-awareness and ability to hear feedback and evolve and be agile. This is what they were about. And they instilled it in my brother and I. And I realized it shouldn't be about who you get in this life. It shouldn't be about who you're exposed to in this life. Every kid deserves that opportunity. So for me, HeyKiddo is really personal, deep in my DNA. And that's why I built it. And it's funny, when I put the team together, I use my team in equilibrium leadership. And I had interns. I had just had a new hire because we were about to get a massive consulting project. And I, made a big mistake as a leader, which I make lots of, and had hired prematurely. And so had this big team ready to go and lost the contract. It just didn't happen. And I was like, crap, but this is the time to get HeyKiddo started. So I locked everyone in my living room. I fed them. We stayed there for a week and we imagined and built, dreamed up this big thing that we're doing now. So
Beautiful.
feed people, that's the lesson.
Feed people and don't let a break be bad.
Oh yeah. I've had so many breaks. I mean, it's just been break after break after break. And just like, again, the breaks have been everything in my life. It's been everything that has shaped me to be who I am today.
A lot of small world coincidences, Nicole. We've had a lot of conversations, but I didn't know that your family was from the South Bronx. We have something in common. My 4-year roommate at the University of Pennsylvania was from the South Bronx, 186th in the Grand Concourse. He was taken out of the South Bronx to A Better Chance, which was a program in the main line where his life changed, where he had an opportunity to get a different, great education. And I've always been influenced by that. He ended up being my best man at my wedding.
Cool.
I've gone back and visited his family a lot in the South Bronx. A lot's changed in the South Bronx. Well, what a small world coincidence right there in terms of the South Bronx.
How cool. And they were from there. They raised us in Westchester, New York. But but it was, man, I remember those days.
How do they go from the South Bronx to Westchester, New York? That's a story in and of itself.
Well, that's actually a really important story that has a lot to do with HeyKiddo, actually. They couldn't afford to raise kids in Westchester. So we actually every weekend would sell at antique shows and flea markets. My grandfather was a jeweler. And so, while other kids are watching Saturday morning cartoons, like my brother and I were like up, dragged out of bed at like 5 a.m. and like working. So when I was 5 and my brother was 11, they were like, what business do you want to be in? Stop complaining. We're like toys. So my dad was a math teacher. He gave us $400, brought us down to the wholesale district in Manhattan. We picked out our inventory, which was toys, and taught us how to keep the books. And my mom, who was an English teacher and an artist, taught us how to make our signage, taught us how to market. My grandfather was the world's best salesman. He taught us how to sell. And it was all the mistakes from that. Those were my first breaks. That's how they taught us this stuff. So that's how they raised us, by doing many jobs. But yeah, and to be honest with you, and I hope no one ever from my MBA listens to this, that's how I learned to run business. It wasn't my training or anything like that. It was doing business.
There's the entrepreneurial mindset. Wow.
Totally.
Awesome.
Totally. It was their fault.
John, I thought you were going to say something else, but in terms of ties, and there's lots of them, I guess, more than I know, but what about parents, influence of parents? I know it's something you talk about a lot as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Humble beginnings. My parents were first generation high school graduates, yet alone college graduates. None of my grandparents graduated from high school, but they all instilled in my parents and us the importance of education. And education has been in my DNA. My father was a school board chairperson in a rural school district outside of Philadelphia. My mom was a professor at a community college. My sister's a Montessori teacher. And so, together we run the Gamba Family Foundation, which is really committed to closing the achievement gap for underrepresented schools. So, definitely similar kind of background, similar stories in terms of humble beginnings and what we had to do to, claw our way through life and learn from the lessons that were provided by our parents and by their parents in terms of how to get ahead and how to lead this kind of life in business and in our personal life.
Yeah.
Generally, this part of the show is more about Nicole, but I think she's okay with this probably if we talk a little differently. We interviewed Kevin Chavis, who basically said, if it's good for a kid, do it, in terms of building a business. So what do you guys say to the education entrepreneurs whose parents had nothing to do with education and who potentially were pretty bad students? They should still go for it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll go first by just saying that it really comes down to that rule that Kevin laid out. What is your why? Why are you trying to do this? Maybe it was your upbringing and maybe something that you didn't have that you want other students and other kids to have. You've had an amazing career, Josh, in terms of what you've done in the aftercare and enrichment space. And probably there's something deep down in there that you committed to based on how you were brought up, whether your parents or family was involved in education or not.
Yeah. And I have to say, like, this is the executive coach coming out in me right now. I don't think entrepreneurship is for everyone. I think it's really, really popular and really hot and like really exciting and like, I'm going to go start my own business. I'm going to do all of that. You know what? This startup stuff has been the hardest professional thing I've ever done. And I have grown and scaled service businesses. I've been doing this for a while. This has kicked my butt. This is not for everyone. It impacts you psychologically, physically. Like it's exhilarating. And your brain is constantly on fire. At least mine is. Like, I'm constantly learning and I don't even know what I don't know. And there's so much I don't know. But I think it's really interesting because like we live in a world right now. It's like, follow your passion, follow your dreams, all of that. I think it's like, do some soul searching actually first. Like, what is it about this that you want? Is it because everyone else is doing it? Do you really want it? Is this where you're going to be happy? Because sometimes following our passion, like, I know this sounds really terrible what I'm about to say. Sometimes that brings you, without the kind of real deep work thinking about it, sometimes it brings you to a not great place because you didn't spend the time actually thinking about and like looking at yourself and looking at what you want and why you want something. So the same thing that your last guest said, like the why around it. Because it's hot and sexy, but it doesn't mean it's for every single person.
Okay. Nicole, on August 24th, 2020, you published something where the headline, I love the headline, but I want to know how you feel about the headline now based on what you just said. The headline is, COVID is no match for HeyKiddo Huddle, an educational toolkit focused on social emotional coping skills. Again, from a journalism standpoint, I love the headline. Now, tell us how you feel since August 24th, 2020, saying COVID-19 is no match for HeyKiddo.
I feel the same way. I mean, like, our mission at HeyKiddo is to give adults better control over their children's mental, social, and emotional health. It's COVID was just the white hot spotlight on the crisis that was escalating. It's been happening for a really long time. Like, finally, we're paying attention to the mental health problem. And it is a blistering inferno right now. So COVID is no match, because the reality is we're finally all talking about it. We're finally realizing it. Money's being thrown to mental health, and I'm putting this under the umbrella of mental health, because that's really that's underlying all of this, right? But yeah, what we're trying to do is give adults these skills and tools to help children, but also to help themselves, because we all know that not every adult has these skills either.
Yeah. And I've watched Nicole kind of carry herself through the pandemic, and I can echo a lot of the convictions that she's just laid out in terms of it being no match. But we've also had conversations that say never let a crisis go to waste. 2 billion learners have gone online. There's an absolute mental health crisis that's out there. Who better than a mental health practitioner like Nicole, who has strong business skills, to be able to attack a problem like this that has the kind of magnitude, the order of magnitude impact that it's had on the world. I mean, this is a hair on fire or an inferno that's out there. Kids are really struggling. Parents are struggling to work with their kids. So it's great to have people who have clinical skills, business skills, and empathy with regard to the problem, to be able to do incredible things to address it.
Totally. We need people with business skills in our corner, John, because we got to find a sponsor for this show. So maybe offline, Nicole can talk to us about how we can find one. We're halfway through this particular show. This is when the sponsor is supposed to chime in. There's none. So yeah, nobody hears it. Okay, we're moving on. we're going to talk about HeyKiddo. Actually, Nicole and I work together on HeyKiddo. I'm a big believer in the project as well. John does too. So let's, in the introduction, I talked about it, but let's give people kind of the elevator pitch on HeyKiddo, and then let's talk about how this product is breaking for good in the education space.
Awesome. Okay. So HeyKiddo is a suite of digital solutions that helps parents, caregivers, and educators anticipate, detect, and intervene when mental, social, or emotional issues arise. And we have 2 products, and a third is coming along. So the school-based product that we have is called HeyKiddo Huddle, which is a complete social, emotional, and mental health curriculum that integrates progress tracking and very strong parent engagement. The kind of little special thing, the special sauce about HeyKiddo Huddle, because we developed this very closely with educators, is that it doesn't put any stress on educators. I mean, there's no time. There is absolutely no time. So the way it's built and the way it's designed is there's no need to think. It's, you do it, you facilitate it, but ultimately it's about you stepping out and letting the group take over, letting the kiddos take over. And something amazing happens when kiddos start taking over and start working with one another and start empathizing and understanding one another. You know what happens over time? It's harder to bully. It's harder to be mean. You know, it's harder to, when you know some intimate stuff about someone else, it's just harder. So that group, and we know this from psychology and group dynamics, once it actually forms and gets over that awkwardness, some magic happens, and kids start supporting one another. And it's pretty cool. And we've had some awesome outcome studies that we've done. Preliminary, we still have a lot more to do, but you know what? It works. It works. Kids that are with the progress tracker that are in the red, they move up and they get better. And kids that are kind of average move up. And I'd love to wave the red flag, but the truth is when you focus on this stuff intentionally on a daily basis, just like you focus on math or science, you build the skill. You get stronger. You build the foundation.
How much has the world, though, changed, Nicole, since 2020? You know, we've got the George Floyd systemic inequities. We've got the pandemic, the global pandemic. We now have, political strife in almost everything that we do. You're right, I'm wrong. You're wrong, I'm right. And now we have the crisis in Ukraine, where the world's on fire. How much has that impacted the parent-child relationship?
Oh my God, it impacted so much. You know, I've been thinking a lot about this lately because it's a great question. You know, it used to be that like every generation had their relative trauma, right? It wasn't worse, it wasn't better, just had their relative trauma. This generation, for the first time, it's a little different. Yeah. It's a little different. Like, you know, being and I actually can say that because you're hearing the issues being brought up on the couch, you know?
Yeah.
The anxiety of being shot while in school. The anxiety that is the earth going to, Mother Nature's pissed. Is the earth going to be here? War, the political strife, the anger, the rage, kids, and then the intent, and I have to say it this way, the intended consequences of social media. Those are not unintentional consequences. Those were intended consequences of social media. The damage that this has had to the psyches of children and of parents has been so profound. So this is why that we're seeing before COVID, that drastic increase in anxiety disorders, depression among kids, suicide rates skyrocketing. It's really intense. And parents I'm not saying all parents, but parents aren't necessarily equipped to handle this. We weren't raised, I mean, we had our own stuff, but we didn't have that stuff. It's harder.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've had these courageous conversations with my 13-year-old on this very issue. And, you know, we're watching TV and it is social media, but it's also mainstream media.
Mainstream.
And, you know, there's a camera going around the city in Ukraine with dead bodies, literally in the streets. And my son looks at me and says, "Did you ever see anything like this at 13 years old?" And I was like, buddy, I freaked out watching Salem's Lot. Like that affected me for like years. Maybe watching the nuclear war show during the Cold War with Russia was eventually going to blow us all. Maybe that, but nothing like this. Like over and over, choking people out by the police on the ground. People dying in school shootings. Great, that's a great point. And the trauma associated, like. We never had to like go under our desks because we had a shooting, right. A shooting drill. We had right. fire drills. We never had a shooting, right. And it's really tough to think about what they're going through. Day in, day out, year in, year out. The bullying. And I raised 2 boys. I can only imagine. I hear these horror stories also that it's a whole different ballgame raising young teenage girls or young women these days too.
Well, I think it's so. It is so profound. We're seeing the impact. Like, again, it is an inferno. And, I think that parents, because parents are also just having their own anxiety. Like we're all, unless you're completely under a rock, like this is a little different for all of us. And how do we deal with this? And again, the exposure and just, it's chronic ick. So all of us are having trouble. Like one of the things we do at HeyKiddo is we send out, tips on breaking news, like how to talk about it at home. And I was like, okay, that's going to be a feature of this and we're going to do this. I didn't think we'd have to be doing it as frequently as we do it because there's so many traumatic world events occurring. But that's where I think the key is. And that's where I think one of the keys in the education system. If we can do all we want in schools, but if kids are coming home to a home setting where it's leaking out all over the place and there's high anxiety and there's a lot of chaos, nothing we do in school is going to stick. So I really think, or really have that impact that we want. I think that full spectrum is so critical. And I think sometimes we kind of, or it's like, well, it's home, we can't do anything about it. But all this stuff at school isn't going to be as successful unless we also look at home and really equip adults with the tools. And I use adults widely to be educators, parents, caregivers.
Nicole, how does that, what you're saying, which I know you believe in, you're passionate about, how does that resonate with superintendents and principals when you talk to them about the home as well being important?
I mean, everyone would agree, but I think it's frustrating for principals and superintendents and teachers in getting parents engaged. But maybe it's because engagement has to look a little different now. Maybe because engagement isn't about like, just like, hey, your kid's acting out in class. Okay. What am I supposed to do about, like, I don't know what to do. Like I'm not going to all of a sudden, because you told me something, like have that magic wand. Like, this is why I think we need to help. I think we need to help adults learn the skills themselves and gain insight into how to help kids kind of in a more 360 holistic view. Because it's just going to help both sides.
I agree with that. I give this administration a lot of credit too. If you look at the America Rescue Plan and the ESSER funds, $190 billion has been allocated and appropriated for 2 primary things in that bill. And that is things that are going to help with mental health for both teachers and students, and applications that are going to address learning loss and COVID slide, as they call it. And I think that's really important that policymakers woke up to the fact that this really is a challenge and that school systems needed resources to be able to address it.
I think I'm so thankful for the administration for that. And I have to say something that's really interesting. Money has been given to mental health in the schools, but we need to get creative with this. We can't do the same thing we've always been doing. It doesn't mean just, yes, the school counselors, more school social workers and psychologists, we need them. The old way, like, the capacity is not there. The truth is having my foot in the mental health world too, the mental health system is really broken. And the way we've always done things isn't working anymore. So we really need to be creative about it. And that's why I kind of think, and I hate to use the word army right now, but that's why I think we need to equip, like we need an army. And that's why it can't just be, I'm not outsourcing my kid to the school therapist, the school counselor, or the therapist or the teacher. I'm equipping the army to help each other and the kiddos.
Absolutely.
Put on your mental health hat, please.
Hat on.
The executive coach hat, and let's talk directly to the entrepreneurs in the audience. And you just described a monumental task. So how, as entrepreneurs who are trying to break the grade and break for good, can we recognize that there are big tasks to be done, but it's one step at a time? How do you go one step at a time? And I know, and you'll be honest, I know sometimes you can't, right? You do lose control, right?
Yeah. And I think when you have like an entrepreneurial personality, it's like the next big shiny item. Like I have this problem. It's like, oh, I have to do this. Oh, I have to do this. And I think, look, I am surrounded by incredible advisors and mentors like John, like you, even Josh. Like I think, like I feel like you are too. And focus. Sometimes I don't know how. Because my hair's on fire too with it. So I think that if there's anything I've learned, talking about the mistakes I've made with HeyKiddo, like I'm currently going through a program, and John's a mentor through this, called iCore, which is part of our National Science Foundation grant that we have to build the HeyKiddo Talk app, which is tackling the parent and adult issue. And if I knew what I learned, what I'm learning right now, a couple of years ago when I started this, my God, would I be in a different place? So I think what I'm learning now has literally been a life changer for me, which is stepping back, stop making assumptions, talk to as many people as possible. And I think I have a solution in my head. Go talk to as many people as possible, figure out what the solution actually is, figure out what people's needs are, figure out what the pain is, and work toward that. And through that process, be thoughtful about your business model, be thoughtful about your canvas, be willing to pivot, be willing to be mentally agile. Like as a speaker, I talk about mental agility all the time. Be willing to like maneuver your own psychology, and to be able to get rid of things and throw out and be wrong. But I wish I did this years ago.
And
this is changing the game.
And this that she's talking about specifically in this NSF grant is customer discovery, getting out of the building and asking the questions that need to be asked across potential market segments to determine what is the problem, what is the solution, how can that be quantified, how can you challenge assumptions or preconceptions that you may have had, and how can you put them into practice, test them, adapt, and potentially pivot. And that leads you to your beachhead market. That leads you to the cost of acquiring customers. And that leads to your long-term value assumptions that are going to drive your business to sustainability and ultimately scalability. And Nicole and her team has done that really well with an open mind without leading the witness. It's easy to go into those customer discovery interviews and start saying, this is what we're doing. Don't you love it? But she said, tell me a little bit more about your challenge as a parent. Tell me a little bit more about what questions you ask or how you can be inquiry minded so that we can think about our product and service and be able to deliver it in such a way that it's actually going to add value.
Yeah.
Professor Gamba, thank you for that, right? That was a 101 for anybody who wants to understand how to build and scale their business.
Yeah.
The other part, Nicole, that I want to touch on before we go is that bike behind you, and just how people can find, and again, you'll be honest, it's not always easy, find work-life balance, being an entrepreneur and being a parent, or whatever you have to do in your life, balancing it while wanting to grow your business.
So let me say this with a caveat first. The caveat is, look, I suck at it. Like, I'm not good. I'm really good at giving advice to other people about it, but like I struggle with it on a daily basis. I learned a long time ago that in order for me to stay mentally healthy, I need to stay physically fit. and I need to give my mind a break. And the only time my mind actually, for me, for other people, it's different. The only time my mind turns off is when I'm engaging in fitness and like I'm working hard. I'm pretty intense with that. So the thing is that I can't do it during normal hours. Like, so I have to drag my butt out of bed really, really, really early, but it is worth it constantly. And you know what? I go to bed a little bit earlier. It is what it is. So that's important to me, but it took me a long time. Like, it's funny because like, you're like, my husband is a big meditator, and he'd be like, that's the way you have to do it. Or, this person might be like, that's the way you have to do it. That's the way you have to do it. You know what? Stop listening to other people, listen to your own body and listen to your own mind, and figure out what it is for you that clears your head. And having a kid has changed everything for me. And so the other thing that I have found joy and kind of mental health with is when I kind of set some boundaries, and I'm not always good at this, is like, this is my time with my family. This is my kiddo and husband. Like, this is my time. These are the things that I set boundaries with. And I again, every day is a struggle, because I'm also in the habit of working really hard. And I use that word carefully. I'm in the habit of working very hard, and I haven't gotten myself out of the habit, like bordering workaholic here. So I think figuring out what your preferences are versus your habits versus the things that make you feel lighter. I also think, my God, I could talk for hours about this. I think that, as humans, we have expectations of ourselves and others. And you always know if an expectation has shifted over to be a rigid expectation. And nothing in our body or minds are rigid. We're dynamic. We're evolving till the day we die. But you always know when it's shifted over to a rigid, harmful expectation when you start trash talking yourself or other people. Like if I miss a workout and I start trash talking myself, that's become a rigid, like, oh, I work out this many days a week. When you hear yourself trash talking yourself or someone else, that's your time to reevaluate your expectations, because that is what starts raising your anxiety. And that stuff is what starts closing down your ability to be agile and flexible. And that's like an hour-long conversation. And I'm super into that stuff. And I know we don't have time. But I think that, like, more than work-life balance, it's about like discovering like the chatter, the crap that goes on in your head that kind of shuts you down to be able to be more flexible in your responses in yourself and with other people.
I'm welling up because I found myself this morning when my 13-year-old lost his house key for the, 45th time, yelled at him, and then walked in and said, I'm a terrible parent. So there you go. That's an exact situation.
Exactly.
Maybe I need to reevaluate and think it's a darn $1 key. Go down and get another key. And he's a 13-year-old.
It's a key. And
he
loses
John,
keys. The key.
You know what you'd be in a therapy session here, Nicole. Jesus.
You know what causes parent burnout? Like, this is fascinating. Like, because every parent is so burned out. You know what causes parent burnout? Your expectation of what you should be as a parent versus how you actually are showing up as a parent. And that's what's burned everyone the hell out. Yeah. And so, and that trash talk stuff, like, drop the suitcase of trash, drop the guilt, drop all that crap.
And go use the Peloton of parenting. The Peloton of parenting.
The Peloton of parenting. HeyKiddo app. HeyKiddo Talk app.
Wow. We nailed it there.
High five.
Nailed it there.
Discoveries meetings later. Right.
Amazing, guys. Well, thank you, Nicole, for joining us. John, obviously, thank you for hosting this with me. Nicole, we believe in you, and we'll do anything to help. And the thing about, I think, kind of the community we're trying to build here is, I know John and I know Nicole well enough at this point that, and if anybody's out there needs our help, you reach out, we'll try and help, whether it's entrepreneurial or business wise, or clearly Nicole's got some good parenting advice, Not
good parenting advice. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I have good psychological tricks for like plowing through and being, a leader.
Nicole is the Jess King of parenting coaching.
Thank you. That is a compliment. Thank you.
Wow. We got to go, but the metaphors keep coming. So that's all good. I wish we could stay longer, but honestly, thank you for joining us, Nicole. This has been fantastic.
Thank you.
And we'll keep up with you, and everybody have a great day. And listen to what Nicole said. Good stuff.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening, Breakers. Next time on Breaking the Grade.